Hi, it's Andrew Paul Cronin. Thank you for listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. Over the past couple of years, I've talked to artists, a poet, a doctor, my two moms, an orchestra conductor, a ghost hunter, a race car driver, a professional dancer, and many, many more. If you like these stories, if you like the guests, if you like the questions, if you like the show, please consider supporting it. Go to qaapc.com/donate. Thanks.
But I was always sort of curious about Cronin. I thought he was some sort of wizard. I thought he was older than he was. I thought a lot of things, and then he comes, he's like, he's just this guy. But he does the full spectrum. He lives down the street. So here's Cronin.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you're listening to the Q&A with A.P.C., the show that features conversations with artists, cultural figures, policymakers, performers, and other innovators living in Virginia. Episode 36, A1. My guest is the hip-hop recording artist, Awon. Born Antoine Wiggins, Awon began recording music in 2008 and has released 7 full-length albums in the last 10 years. He has shared the stage and opened for such hip-hop acts as Chubb Rock, EPMD, Rakim, Common, Odyssey, and many, many more. In 2014, along with frequent collaborator Phonics, he founded Don't Sleep Records. Together, they have released 3 critically acclaimed albums that feature elements of jazz and harken back to the golden era of hip-hop, the classic sound of the 1990s. His new album, The Actual Proof, was released in March and is available at a1andphonics.com and wherever music is streamed and sold. For more information about Awon and his music, visit don'tsleeprecords.com. Well, Awon, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. As an independent musician, how much of what you do comes down to marketing and self-promotion, like constantly updating, reviewing, and replying on social media accounts? Like, how much of it is that part of it?
Well, for me, that's everything. I'm a people person. I like to talk to people, and I think that what makes our following and my following as an artist, I say ours, speaking of the label, but mine in general, is because I try to learn my audience. So I try to make a effort to reply to every comment, respond to every email that I get, including every purchase email, which is hell. Like, it's, at first it was easy to keep up with,
Right.
but like we just did pre-orders, and I'm dreading responding to everybody's email because it's not going to be good. It's going to take me probably 2 to 3 days just to reply. I reply to people by name. I don't like automated messages.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to be grassroots and truly independent, it's all about being hands-on and consistent and disciplined. And that's what I've been able to do.
Awon, was that replying to every email and liking every comment or replying to every comment? Was that something that someone told you was a good idea to do, or is that something that you came with yourself?
No, that's something that I wanted to do for myself because it's the right thing to do. It shows people that you're a human being. I get annoyed when artists forget that the audience is why they're an artist. When you fall out of favor of your audience, you're just back to who you were before you made music. So I tend to not forget that it's the audience who buys Jordans and sneakers and feeds and clothes my kids and pays my lights. I never forget it's the audience who does that, not me.
Yeah.
Because it's a million people who make music.
Right.
They favored me
Right.
and put me in this position. So it's my duty, to serve my audience and always give them 100%.
Your friend and producing partner Phonics said that if people want to make it anywhere as an independent artist, you have to understand that promotion, marketing, and making the right connections are as important as creating the music, and that if you don't understand that piece of it, you aren't going to make it anywhere in the business.
Yeah, he's right. I've gotten into a little bit of consult work, so a lot of people call me. Other artists, people that have businesses and other disciplines, they call me. We talk a lot. And the main thing that I find is people really don't understand their audience. And not understanding your audience is like you're going to the grocery store for tires. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that's the first thing.
Understanding what they want to see, transparency in terms of like your life, like the things you're talking about, like sneakers, things like that, or they don't understand. What don't they understand?
They don't understand who their audience even, who are they? What's their demographic? Who are they? I went for years trying to make music, or thought that I was making music for my peer group. And you get to a show, and it really dawned on me in Europe, when we were in Europe, and you go to a show, and it's a bunch of kids there. Everybody's like 18 years old or 19 years old. I'm like, it shocked me at first to see how young people were. I was in London. Some kids couldn't even get in. I had forgot to, because again, we promote our own stuff.
Right.
I had forgot to put age limits on it. So these kids showed up like, I come to the door, the bouncer's like, no.
Like teenager kids.
Yeah, they're not getting in. I was like, I didn't know. I was like, what about a wristband? He was like, no.
X on the hand.
Yeah, he was like, no, they're not coming in. Eventually, they found a way in.
Sure. As
but,
kids do.
But I was just shocked to see that that's my audience. Kids hit me up as young as my oldest son. And it's weird. It's like, wow, I could be a father to some of the people that are consuming what I'm saying. So it makes you really think, but it also let me know that I was missing my target for a long time. And maybe this could have picked up a lot sooner,
right,
had I known that, and had I been really aware. But when you're making music, you're not thinking about checking your insights. You're not thinking about analyzing data.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about that.
Right.
You're just thinking about putting music out, and whoever shows up, shows up. But I learned valuable lessons from social media and just watching the audience and how it's grown and who's actually watching. And I was just really surprised at who's actually coming out and supporting the music.
A1, your new album, The Actual Proof, was released March 20th of this year, which marks your fourth collaboration with Phonics. There was a remix album, so are we calling it 4 or are we calling it 3?
Well, he calls it 3.
Okay.
So I'm calling it the third album.
Can you talk a little bit about the new album and what the title means? Why The Actual Proof as opposed to just The Proof?
Well, Phonics actually came up with the title. I read the title, and we already had some songs done, and I said, yeah, this is it. I felt like we are the actual proof that if you have an idea, if you have a dream, you can make it happen by just going out there and putting your best foot forward and doing it. And we the proof of that. We've been able to do this independent. A lot of the people who listen are musicians themselves, aspiring musicians. Everybody has a dream. Everybody kind of wants to escape the monotony. People are uneasy about the direction of where everything is going. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. We wanted to say, look, we the actual proof that, you can do exactly what you want to do if you just make an attempt. An attempt and a failure is better than not trying at all, because you learn from your mistakes.
Your new album, The Actual Proof, was released through your own independent record label, Don't Sleep Records, which you co-founded and co-own with the producer Phonics. It would seem like being an MC musician would be a lot to take on in and of itself. What led you to want to start your own record label?
Well, we wanted an imprint. We were putting out a lot of music together, and instead of just not putting down a label or an imprint where we can have this creative hub for everything that we put out, because we felt like each album should be able to live on its own. Each album, in fact, is its own revenue stream. It has its own life, its own concept. It should be that way. If we just were putting out albums in all these places, where would they converge at? Where can we have this umbrella? It was only right for us to create the label so that people can have a home for this collection of music. Another thing was the fact that Phonics and I both collect vinyl. And part of my collection is looking for certain vinyl from certain labels or certain vinyl from certain artists for certain labels. Prime example I give you is the group the Ohio Players. I have all Ohio Players, all of they catalog. But what's most special to me is the Westbound albums. That's the albums with the S&M, with the lady that's bald and they got the leather on. You know, you got Pain, Pleasure, Ecstasy. Those albums, to me, are their best work. So I look for those labels. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So we always thought that having our own label and the fact that we put out vinyl, people would want our records from this label. They'll mean the most. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So that's why we did it.
A1, I read in an interview that you gave that one of the reasons you wanted to start a label was to avoid some of the cliche things. I think cliche was the word that you may have used in the piece that I read, that you wanted to avoid some of the cliched things that certain labels did. So what is something specific that labels do that you specifically wanted to avoid in starting your own record label?
We wanted to avoid having to feel like we needed a radio single. You know, we wanted to avoid having to adopt a look. you know, jazz guys don't really they have their own look. You know,
Like a look on your person, yourself, or a look in terms of like graphic design?
both.
Okay.
You know, basically with other people's money, you're gonna do what they ask you to do.
I see.
It
Yeah.
was just not to have another boss to tell us we should be more like this group or we should be more like that group. We would be just like everybody else at that point. It would be very difficult to stand out. Isn't that ironic that just being yourself, you could stand out like a sore thumb. But as soon as you get into the corporate machine, you become everyone else. You become just ubiquitous in the sea of hip hop. And that's not what I wanted.
You said in an interview that Don't Sleep Records is a label by definition, but your ethos is more curation of the soundtrack of this generation and beyond. What are the hopes, fears, and ideas of this generation that you've heard play out or is being spelled out in their music?
Wow. I think that a constant theme is uncertainty for young people, from preteens and teens all the way up to college level. Uncertainty, because you know everything is energy based, and I think that collective consciousness does exist for all of us as human beings, and young people just feel this wave of uncertainty. The second thing I think is that they are afraid of losing their individuality and freedoms because we're so wired in not having anything for themselves. We had a lot, our generation had a lot that we just own, you know. But what does this generation own outside of social media, technology, you know? So I wanted to express that no matter what, you know, no matter what anybody says, I think that young people of today own something that's not honed on, which is awareness. They're very, very aware. These young people are very, very smart even when you're in a conversation, they're kids, they like to text, they might not make great eye contact, they might not be as assertive, but they're very aware, they're very smart, very in tune with what's going on today. So that's what I see. That's part of like their fears. What they want is they want a place, they want a seat at the table, they want an identity, a social identity, just not to be defined as a class or generation. They hear people talk about millennials a lot.
Labeled with a letter of the alphabet.
Exactly. They don't want that. They want to be defined by something. And I think that what happened in Parkland,
right, we're seeing it play out right now.
Yeah, it was a indicator of how intelligent, how bright, and how resourceful our children are.
Took to the streets in a month.
With all of that I said, I hate to get on Parkland, but it just goes to how I feel about the audience. These kids today are growing up in a world that has way more resources. It's supposed to be safer. It's supposed to be better. And we're constantly failing them as the adults in the room, day by day by day. This shouldn't be happening because I didn't have to worry about this. Now New York City's in the 80s, whole nother story. But I didn't have to worry about these things. Now as a parent, I feel like I still shouldn't have to worry about these things, letting my children, go. So I feel like that our music, especially the elements of jazz and everything, is enough of an intellectual high for them, but also enough of an introspective message to uplift them. And I feel like that's why they come to us. So many kids hit me up like, yo, your stuff makes my day better, or it helped me get through this, or I study to you guys' music. And that's what makes me feel the best. That's why I keep going.
When you were 8 years old, you knew you wanted to rap. How did you find your way to hip hop?
Well, I definitely knew that I wanted to rap at 8 years old. How I found my way to hip hop was through my aunts, my uncles, my parents, radio, and public access television. In New York City, there was a TV show called Video Music Box. It aired, I want to say, it's been years. That's like 30 years ago. I want to say it was Channel 31, though, because I pride myself on having a great memory. And the host, his name was Ralph McDaniels. And he would just have all of the best rappers on and
like
interview them.
Live in-house.
Live in studio or on location, and he would show their videos. Now, this was cool because you also had Yo MTV Raps, but we didn't have cable back then. I'll have to, go uptown or somewhere else where cable was available because it wasn't available in my neighborhood at that time. Or maybe my grandparents was just cheap and they just didn't want to get cable. But anyway, back then cable was a very big luxury. You had to have the wires. It was a very complicated process, So anyway, Video Music Box to me was better than the product that MTV was putting on, which became Yo MTV Raps. No diss to Fab Five Freddy, but Ralph McDaniels was just, I guess, more a natural at it, and he brought on the guys that I wanted to see. Yo MTV Raps was bringing on guys that I saw already on Video Music Box. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was like that was the core of how I really got into it, seeing these people and the fact that they were young. They were like my aunts and uncles' ages. It made it really accessible. And living in New York, I would run into people sometimes and say, oh, wow. I'll never forget my aunt. She knew Biz Marquis. Mm-hmm. And he used to frequent the Albee Square Mall. One day we were in the Albee Square Mall, which is not far from where I live. I had to be like 7 to 8 years old. And Biz Markie, he did this thing, this beatbox with his throat, and he go, and I remember my aunt talking to him, and I asked him after she introduced me to him, can he do that? And I thought it was so cool that he just did.
He did it.
Yeah, he did it. He did it, and we laughed about it, and, it was just a great moment great memory. And I've met so many artists that way, just within my neighborhood, and just being at the right place at the right time for everything.
When you were 11 or 12 years old, your dad gave you cassette tapes with different artists that he thought you should listen to. Do you know why he chose this age, 11 or 12, to gift you those tapes?
You know what? I don't know because I never asked him. I just think that it's possible that he saw that I had an interest, in the music and how enamored I was by it. And my father's only 18 years older than me, so literally we grew up together. Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory, Brand Nubian, One for All. Again, another tape that I had that he gave me. That music at that time, it really changed my life. It gave me introspective outlook on the world. It let me know what it was like to be growing up as a black man in a strange time. And maybe it was my father trying to teach me something, that without being preachy.
Sure.
A way that I could listen.
Right.
And it stuck with me. So that was always a blessing. But, like I said, both my parents, them being so young, they gave me a lot of guidance and pushed me towards the arts, as opposed to saying you need to do this, this, and this. It was like, if he's good at this, let him do it.
Feed it.
Yeah.
Sprinkle it in.
Exactly. But he was always that guy that I saw accepting of everything. Being an immigrant coming from Barbados to New York City and then having immediately have to fit in with an accent. 13 years old coming to America. Wow. So him having to do all of that, I think he had to embrace something, and it became hip hop.
Growing up in New York City, you've talked in interviews about the impact seeing graffiti on trains and on buildings had on you, and how you recognize it as one of the cornerstones of hip-hop culture. Make a case for why graffiti should be respected as a true art form, one that is ultimately more good than bad.
For me, graffiti was like another language. It was hieroglyphics. When you come from poverty, I guess people was just trying to make it look better. What is it vandalism if the building is already crumbling? You know what I mean? I understand the whole train thing. It's not your property, whatever. They killed that with the white elephants. I know you heard about white elephants with Mayor Koch making the paint repellent trains, or whatever. I think that it beautified, the city. It made me not feel so bad about where I lived. It made me not feel bad about riding on a train and taking public transportation. It made every day an adventure, going to work with my mom, because back then, your kids went to work. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
I went to work with my mom or my grandma all of the time, and those train rides in the city were crazy. For me, that was the amazing thing. It gave the city color and life. Even the tags, the hand styles, when you're trying to read somebody's name and just figure it out, you can sit on the train and just look at one hand style that you can't crack. It might take you your whole ride, but it's just amazing to see. Graffiti, for me, is just typography. When you look at history, typography defines certain movements and events. So post-civil rights, 70s, people are coming out of this rough economic time. The Bronx is burning down. All of this stuff is happening. What refuge do people have but creativity? You can't afford a canvas, so your canvas has to be this crumbling wall or this tunnel or something for you to express yourself. So, and the fact that post-civil rights, you talk about from late 60s, 1968, I believe Taki 183, that was the first tag. You go from late 60s to early 80s, graffiti is in galleries. That's big.
Yeah.
If Andy Warhol could embrace graffiti and kind of rear younger artists into the gallery direction, if you didn't have graffiti, you wouldn't have Basquiat. If you didn't have graffiti, you wouldn't have Keith Haring. And I will also tell kids today, if you didn't have graffiti, you wouldn't have KAWS. You wouldn't have Shepard Fairey. You wouldn't have Banksy. You wouldn't have these artists. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, graffiti is pop art.
Sure.
It has become a contemporary form of or art form itself. And you know, you could go far back in time as you want. People have always written on walls.
A1, every now and again, it's been a few episodes. I'll do a rapid fire segment, first thing that comes into your mind. So are you all right to do that for a
Sure,
minute?
of course.
All right. A1, you ready to play rapid fire?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Favorite adult beverage?
Oh, Hennessy.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
What time do you go to bed?
12, midnight.
What time do you normally wake up?
5 a.m.
Tattoos or piercings?
None, neither.
What's your dream car?
Range Rover.
The greatest basketball player of all time is?
Michael Jordan.
Your favorite candy bar?
Snickers.
What's a talent you have that people don't know that you have?
People don't know I draw.
What's a talent that you don't have but that you wish you had?
I wish I could dunk a basketball.
Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, your favorite of the three?
Lunch.
Yeah, mine too. The greatest movie of all time is?
Scarface.
What was the last movie you saw in the movie theater?
Black Panther.
Morning, noon, or night? Favorite time of the day?
Morning.
Can you name all 5 boroughs in New York City?
Yes, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island.
What's your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
What's your favorite color?
Red.
The best magazine is?
Wax Poetics.
What was your favorite cereal when you were a kid?
Fruity Pebbles.
If we were going to go eat after this, where would we go?
Grilled Cheese Bistro.
Olympics. Boring, okay, or great?
Okay.
What's your favorite cereal now?
Oh, I would say Honey Bunches of Oats.
It's like the same thing as like Fruity Pebbles, but it's not the rainbow and a little bit healthier,
Right, exactly.
Right? It's like the same texture.
Yeah.
Who was the last person you hugged?
My wife.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
If we were going to go eat after this, where would we definitely not go?
Taco Bell.
All right, the final round is word association. So I'm going to name a company or just a thing, and you just tell me like what you think of when you hear that company or that word. All
Sure.
right? Disney,
Pixar.
iPhone,
Apple.
revenue,
Money.
Instagram,
Likes.
Virginia,
For lovers.
Google,
Maps.
Beastie Boys,
Brooklyn.
bike lanes,
Stay out of them.
walking,
Texting.
Adidas,
Run DMC.
Nike,
Jordans.
Subway,
Metro cards.
the gym,
Work.
DMX,
My uncle.
Donald Trump,
Fraud.
YouTube,
Videos.
craft beer.
Beards. Like beards.
I get it. Netflix,
Chill.
National Public Radio,
You know what? Necessary.
Barack Obama,
I think of change.
Jay-Z,
Business.
Star Wars,
Everything.
Screen Time,
Limited.
Democrat,
Label.
Republican,
Label.
podcast.
You should listen to it.
A1, thanks so much for playing Rapid Fire. I appreciate it.
No problem.
You did well.
No problem. Thank you.
Can we talk a little bit about your childhood?
Sure, of course.
You were born in 1980 in Brooklyn, New York. You lived in New York City until you were 9 years old, and then your family moved to Virginia. Do you remember your feelings about moving?
I didn't want to move. Not at all. I was like, why? Why are we leaving? But, I eventually warmed up to it. And when I saw Virginia and saw where we moved, it was incredible. I wasn't a prisoner anymore, to having to wait for an adult to go outside. For me to go outside and play and be free, I had to have somebody with me.
How and why Virginia?
Family was here. My grandmother's family had already moved down, her sisters. So she decided that she liked it. It was nice. My mom had came down and saw it. And my great grandma had eventually saw a house that she thought would be right for our family, and we moved down.
What do you think was the transition or adjustment like for your parents?
Um, they liked it, to be honest. My mom didn't care for the slowdown at first. My dad it seemed to enjoy being down here, and coming back and forth. He was still going back and forth to New York and everything. So I mean, they pretty much adapted really really quick. My grandfather had made the decision to get a place big enough for everybody. He wanted everybody out of New York. It was just getting more and more dangerous. More and more things was happening. So everybody agreed. I mean, everybody. So it was a good adjustment to say the least. It was for the better. At least that's what we thought, and I'm glad that they made that decision.
I suppose there's some comfort in knowing that, like, kind of everyone collectively came together.
Yeah,
I mean,
having
looking back, I suppose.
family has always been a big part of my life. Seemed to be a very valuable thing to my grandparents, keeping everybody together, everybody alive. And my grandparents were successful at that. They didn't have to see any of their children perish. And that was happening quite often. The homicide rate in 1988 in New York City was over 2,000 homicides, and we talking about Chicago now. You look at the murder rates from the late 70s all the way to the mid 90s. I would say not even the late 80s, but the mid 90s were astronomical in the major cities in America.
When did you first become aware of your talents? Were you rapping along and keeping up with the artists you were listening to, like in terms of speed and articulation, and realized you had something? Was it like, when did you realize that you had it?
Probably when I was about 13 or 14 years old. I was still getting help from my aunt. My aunt when I was younger. Then it became my cousin Jay, who was like a mentor for me. And he produced a lot of my earlier songs. My cousin Jay Swift. Jay, was helping me with rhymes, and when I would get the schemes down really good, really fast, and
Writing
then
your
I would,
own stuff.
yeah, and then I would build on what he helped me write, and he was like, this is really good. You should continue, and I did. And when I became a young adult, when I came home, he really put the burners on to help me hone my skills. So I went from, him just helping me when I was like 13 years old, craft rhymes and prepare for talent shows and stuff, to me coming home. Now I'm a young man. I would go stay with him in New York, record with him. He put me in the studio, got me on some showcases.
Wow.
He did a lot.
Wow.
And he really schooled me to the rap game. So when he took that type of interest in me and invited me to do these things with his people, that's when I knew it was for real. That's when I knew, okay, if Jay's saying that I'm good and he's around the elite of MCs, that's when I said, all right, I'm decent.
Do your lines come to you at all times of the day, no matter what you're doing or where you are,
Absolutely.
or who you're with?
Absolutely. Sometimes I can just think of something and that a line will stick with me, and I know that I have to begin or end something with that line. So and again, I'm just in a space now with age in my life that where I try to say things that matter. A lot of the times earlier in my career, I wrote a lot about rapping. I'm tired of rapping about rapping. So now I write a lot about my life or experience, because I realize that people want to learn. My audience is younger than me. Just like I was a younger, impressionable kid listening to older artists for guidance, and understanding of life and things like that. So I take that into account. So everything is more about meaning.
In an interview, you said that you keep odd hours and you create early in the morning or late at night. You choose those times because that's when you're most creatively awake?
No.
No.
That's when everybody's asleep or nobody's home. I like to be completely alone. I used to like to go to the studio and create with my friends and have everybody around. Now it's a very sullen and almost like a melancholy, like a process where I have to be alone. I have to be just myself, the music, and my emotions and the way that I feel to really build energy that I can create something that people would listen to and tap into.
What has being an MC taught you about music?
Being an MC has taught me that music is about freedom, because being an MC is very, it can be as controlled as a pop's record where everything is so formatted and so driven by the drum and melody, and it's just so tempo driven. But with MCing, you don't have to do that. You can actually use your voice as an instrument and create a melody within the melody within the melody. So when you hear Biggie flip through 4 or 5 cadences in one rhyme, that is the art of MCing, like being able to be an instrument amongst other instruments and use your voice in that way. It's not about you overdoing it or underperforming. It's about you finding that spot that's most natural, that your voice works with the song, with the beat, with the structure, that I realized that I am an instrument. I used to think about hip hop like, I just rap. But nah, I realized that this is something that a lot of people can't do because it's so memory driven and so driven on coordination and word coordination and timing, that MCing is special. And it's a part of music that many people still don't understand, but they're in awe of it. How does it happen? How does the brain react? How does it work?
In the song Escaping Youth from the 2014 album Matte Black Soul, you talk about some of the things that has changed in your life as you've gotten older. Your hairline, not as quite as interested in shoes, gray hairs in your beard, kids calling you sir. Talk about some of these pluses, minuses in your life and sort of adjusting to getting older. I love the song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm cool with it. It's just different, being older, and it's just weird getting into that adult space where, I'm going into a meeting with a teacher with an Oxford, and again, I'm Mr. Wiggins, I'm everything,
It's kind of an out-of-body experience.
Yes.
You see yourself on the outside.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I've got another aging question. So in 2 years, you'll be 40 years old. When you were growing up, what was your concept of someone who is 40 years old or who was 40 years old? And how close to that concept are you now that you're almost there?
Wow, I never really thought about it like that. It was either young or old. So, when I saw older people, I didn't see them like everyone else would, because the older people in my life were like extremely cool. Like my father, who's not that much older than me, and my mom, who still, she puts me on the music, like especially contemporary jazz stuff, that I don't know about.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm close to what I expected it to be. I just didn't expect the amount of respect that young people meet me with today. It feels good to have that level of respect from people and to be taken seriously.
When I was growing up, there was a guy on our street who would lay in his yard and weed his grass by hand. And I would be like riding my bike or riding my skateboard or walking down the street with my friends. And I remember just thinking in my own head, like, man, like that seems so boring. But now I can kind of get into some old man. Like I can appreciate gardening. I can appreciate stuff that I could never really think, like when I was a kid, like there's no way I'd ever be into that. And I may not really be into it, but I can like certainly appreciate it and see the pull to that. Is there anything like that you would classify as like kind of like an old man thing where you're like, yeah, but like I'm really into that thing now?
Yeah, it's funny you bring up gardening, because my grandfather was an expert gardener. I remember he took we lived in Ingersoll houses, projects in Fort Greene, and him being from Macon, Georgia, he took a median that was outside a fence and told him, look, I'm going to make an urban garden. He was urban gardening in the 80s. He made a garden. He had collard greens like on Park Avenue in the 80s when no urban garden. It was weird. We used to be like, why is he out there? Why is he out in the dirt? Like, why? But we would eat those greens. And he came down here. He made a beautiful garden. And I found myself liking to keep things alive. Like, my wife picked a blue hydrangea for our wedding flower. And I took that and I planted it. And it's still alive. And my 10th anniversary is Tuesday. It's alive in our backyard. I kept it alive all of these years, and now if I put charcoal on it, ash, it blooms different colors depending on the pH of the soil, all types of plants in the house. So I like to keep things alive. I like to see life. It always makes me think of my grandfather. I pull weeds up by hand too, no chemicals or anything like that. I do it the old way, like my grandfather would do it. So I can appreciate those things because you find a maturity and an understanding of why. When you're younger, you don't know why. But as I know the answer why to some things, it's all right with me. So even though I may not have been able to see myself doing the things that I do now, like I couldn't see myself married, 10th anniversary, buying rings. The 10th anniversary of my first album is this year too, because I got married the same year my first album came out. So all of these things are culminating. I never expected any of that.
When you see 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify and some tracks on Spotify have over 1 million listens, what goes through your mind when you see those numbers?
A lot of things. I don't want to sound ungrateful right now, but I was just saying, like, where's my Range Rover? Why am I still stressed over money sometimes? Why don't more people know? Maybe it's not enough. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe I need to do more. Am I still not doing enough? I question so much when I see those things. And again, I don't want to sound ungrateful because some people would, really be happy with that. But I'm not happy because the recognition from the professional side of music doesn't acknowledge that. Google acknowledges that I'm a musician and an artist. You know what I mean? So many searches acknowledge that. You can find tons of information, but I'm not invited to the table, maybe because of the approach, maybe because I'm not paying the right people, or is it possibly because I'm not playing by the rules? So it's bittersweet. It's like, oh, this is great, and I'm happy for it. But at the same time, I'm a little bitter about it because since the approach is unconventional, it's not acknowledged. You know what I mean?
In the song Certain Presence off your 2015 release, Knowledge of Self, you talk about being frustrated about not getting the recognition you feel you deserve and how people will eventually understand something that you have always known, which is that you're a skilled lyricist and that more or less that these are your current frustrations at this stage of the game. My question is, if you were able to get the recognition and the fame and the respect, what do you envision that life to be? And what do you perceive the frustrations would be with that life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Fame is not something that I necessarily want because fame comes with hatred. Fame comes with a lot of criticism. Fame comes with misunderstandings, lack of privacy. Fame comes with basically giving other people full access to your life. And I don't believe that we should look at people in that way. I think that artists deserve a certain amount of privacy, yet we feel entitled to know every detail about their lives. And we tend to ridicule them when they make mistakes in life, which everybody make. Whether someone was unfaithful in their relationship or someone has a substance abuse problem, it tends to be a headline instead of a cry for help or assistance. And then when it's too late, when you have situations like Heath Ledger or Robin Williams or even younger people who perished due to the pulls and stresses of fame, like capital steeds. We want to celebrate them when we can't give them flowers anymore, and that's unfortunate. So fame comes with loss of privacy, and again that hatred, because people root for you until you actually win the game. You have to maintain a balance, or always being in the game, always losing, always being the underdog, for people to consistently root for you. Once you're supposed to win, and once you the victor, every time you become the Patriots. This is a lonely place. Creativity is very lonely because we do it alone, and people don't understand that it comes with a lot of depression, a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of things that can drive you down into a dark place and a rabbit hole really quick. A lot of people don't have a great support system, and again, people think money is freedom. Money is bondage. Biggie said it best: more money, more problems. I'm living with that. I live with that. You generate wealth, you tend to spend more, and once you generate have a certain lifestyle, you kind of have to pray you maintain it. That's hard. That's hard. Like, it's really hard. I remember sometimes being broke, dead broke. Going to Coinstar, putting change in Coinstar for gas. Being younger, especially after my oldest son was born, wanting to try to leave street life alone, pursue music, and fly the straight and narrow. It's hard. And you think of all of the sacrifices you make to make art. And then we look at like how people ridicule Kanye West and talk crazy on his timeline, talk about his wife, his kids. That's too much, man. That's too much. I don't care how much money somebody's got. That's just a little too much for me. So that's the downside of fame. I would prefer at least respect, maybe some acknowledgement. I don't care. I don't care about awards and accolades. None of that matters. But, maybe when my favorite artist sees me or notices me, that's cool stuff. That's when it works. But all of that other stuff, fame, fortune, riches, that's not really me and who I am. It's more about, let me provide a stable, warm household for my kids. Let me put something away for their future. Let me build something that they can own and have, and always find some sort of income or wealth via my intellectual property. That's the focus, and that's what I mean by respect and actually getting that acknowledgement, as opposed to fame. Fame is dangerous.
Later this year, you're going out on tour across Europe. This is something you've done before. What have you found out about yourself, your music, and about America having toured Europe?
This will be my third time to Europe. I found that this is hard for me to say, but in Europe, the places that we've been, like France. And London, yeah. And I wasn't a black man. I was just a man. I was an American. Nationality is that way overseas. You are where you come from. You are who your country is. People are not walking around Europe just saying, like, he's a black guy. They saying, he's American, or he's Nigerian, or, he's from somewhere else. I just felt more included. I felt like race wasn't such a big deal. I felt like our politics were behind the times of the rest of the world. And for the first time in my life, I felt like, we got a lot of work to do in America. They lying to us. It's not, it's nice. Europe is really great. They're doing a lot of great things. The vibe is really warm. If you really get to see American exceptionalism at its finest when you leave, and you realize how ignorant we can be to the rest of the world. It was eye-opening, and it was also a positive thing for me, because I realized that there are places where it's very progressive. And to tie that into the music, to be taken seriously, publications coming to interview you before a show. I get radio play over there. I get ASCAP checks, but it's all international. They take what I do seriously. It just makes me think, just like, wow, I'm not against this. I love this country, but to see where we are and the fact that we're not as progressive as we could be is frightening. So, those are the type of things that go through my mind. When I travel, I think about my kids making it home, and really, where is home? All of these questions go through, because I'm always thinking about family, future, life, peace, love, happiness. So I try to seek that.
A1, I love your music. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to me.
Hey, thank you, man. I really appreciate this.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you've been listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. To hear archived episodes, visit QAAPC.com. For exclusive content, including upcoming shows, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at QAAPC. The executive producer of the Q&A with A.P.C. is Ben Riley. The music was arranged by Soup.